Hello everyone, this is week 1 and we're talking about horse evolution, one of your lessons this week. And everything in life has a story. This is the horse's story. It's really important for us to look back at the horse's story so we know how they evolved, where they came from, what their needs were and are today, and see if we can learn from maybe horse traditions of the past that have been brought forward, some useful, some not. So we go back millions of years to find Eohippus, a diminutive land animal that barely represents the horse of today. You can see in the picture next to me that it's amazing. This tiny little 20-centimeter animal about the size of a large house cat can evolve over millions of years into something so big and powerful, weighing 1,000 pounds and running 40 miles an hour, that we know today. For information on the evolution of the horse, you can get additional information from the book featured here. It's called Equine Behavior by the Blackwell Publishing Company. And this is a picture of the book so you can recognize it. You can utilize it. Chapter 3 of that book is all about horse evolution, but it's not a requirement. So let's start with beginning the terminology associated with horse evolution. So you've probably seen this word hippo in common talk in the English language. Well, hippo is a Greek word for horse. Hippomania is an excessive fondness for horses, probably like what I have and had as a little girl. Maybe you can relate to that as well. And the word equo comes from the Proto-Indo-European root meaning horse. So that's where we get equine. And hippodrome, that's where horses race. You may not have heard that term, but in Europe it's very common. And Hippocratic, that used to mean one superior in horses, someone that was really good with horses and maybe worked for the government or for a powerful group. Hippotherapy is the use of horseback riding as a therapeutic or rehabilitative treatment for people. So why is this animal called a hippopotamus? Greeks named it a river horse. Obviously, it swims, it lives mainly in the river. It kind of resembles a horse in some ways, and there you go, hippopotamus. The ancient history of the horse, well, the storytellers of the history of the horse and the evolution are the paleontologists, the archaeologists, and the geologists. They all study various aspects of our Earth and the history of the Earth and what came before us. So paleontology studies fossils of animals and plants. Archaeology is about human history and prehistory through the excavation of sites. And then geology studies rocks, the Earth's core, rock structures from the past. So all of these specialized areas combined can give us the story and the history of the horse. So the horse has classifications just like any species. We go from animals to mammals down to family is called Equidae, and that includes all horse types, ponies, zebras, donkeys, mules. The genus is called the Equus, and then the modern day domesticated horse is called the Equus Caballus. So you need to be familiar with these terms. If you know Spanish or Portuguese, cavallo or caballo, that's where Caballus comes from. So get familiar with these terms and how the horse is classified. Fossils give us definition to evolution. So on the right side of your screen, you can see an Eohippus, which is just amazing that this small animal, again, develops into what we know today as a horse. But you can look at the shoulder, you can look at the legs, you can look at the skull and see some remnants that have moved forward into today's horses. And then this is picture on the left. This is interesting, looking at the legs, feet, and skulls of horses, how they've developed over 60 million years. So truly amazing science. And the feet, of course, that's something that's really fascinating. The horses use their hooves to gain ground and go through mud and climb hills and manage rocks and push off to jump. And they use this one hoof for everything. And it's so important because that hoof also acts as a spongy pump to gather blood and send it back up through the body. So the horse is a movement animal. It has to move, it has to roam to stay healthy. So you can see again where Eohippus had 3 fingers and a predominant middle finger that came down to grasp forest beds and fallen limbs and mossy ground and soft turf. And then as we evolve through the millions of years, you can see how those fingers start disappearing and that middle appendage starts growing and gets stronger. And then eventually we get to the hoof that we have today. And those fingers have then descended all the way up toward the knee, and on either side below the knee, they're called splint bones today. So again, an amazing development of evolution to match what the horse needed. Today's horses are domesticated horses, and they're classified, as we said, as Equus Caballus or Equus ferus Caballus. And the evolution of the horse, we're going to look at the 5 stages of evolution. Now, these have been categorized in very large labeling so that we can make sense out of the 5 stages, because there were many other species within this. I guess you'd call them subspecies, which then died off over time. But these are the ones that have evolved toward the horse of today. And then we look at from 55 to 60 million years ago, all the way up the timeline to today's horse. So what are the main characteristics of change over time and why? So I'd really like you to look at this and think about this. I'm going to be asking this question in the discussion board that we have over this topic. Their size, why did they change size? Why did they get hooves instead of toes? And what happened to their teeth? There are many evolutionary causes to these changes, and I'd like you to start identifying them, and we'll discuss them. So let's go over each of the development stages. This was the first. This is Eohippus or Hyracotherium, a very small 20-centimeter horse. I guess you could call it a horse. It's 4-legged. It has a trunk. It has a hind end, a forequarter, a tail, a head and neck similar to our horses. But it was rounded. It was small. It could hop, skip, and jump very easily, almost like a squirrel today, all around the forest floor. It stood 12 inches tall at the shoulder, weighed probably about 20 to 30 pounds. Its teeth were low-crowned, and it fed on herbaceous plants, and it had 4 toes. Again, the predominant middle toe in front and in back. So notice the color coding on each of these slides as well. It's going to show you the tendons, ligaments, and joint development over time. You will see how we start off with a very short leg, and the leg and all the tendons and ligaments lengthen and lengthen and lengthen over time as the horse evolves. So get familiar with each one of these stages of the horse. This is Mesohippus. This is, again, living in North America, around Colorado, Nebraska, the Dakotas, Canada. This is called the middle horse. It's considered the middle horse between the Eocene and the more modern-looking horses. So we're starting to get a glimpse of what our horse of the future might look like. We're getting a little longer limb. Again, notice the color coding. You're starting to get some hardening of the toes. The tendon is lengthening more behind the knee or behind the carpus joint as it goes up. And we're getting a change in the mouth. So the teeth are changing. Why would that be? Maybe the forage is changing as well, and we are adapting the horse to that forage change. And the Eohippus. This horse is, again, getting closer to what we might consider the horse of today. Notice again the lengthening of the middle limb, the disappearance of the fingers on the sides, and the tendon and ligament structure that goes down into the hoof, the middle hoof, and extends all the way up to the carpus. And the teeth are changing. Notice the teeth. We go from being basically browsers, meaning horses would reach up to get leaves and branches, to now more grazing, perhaps. Mixed feeders, they're called in this particular time slot. So again, get to know each one of these stages. Next, we go to the Pliohippus, and this is getting, again, very close to what we know today as the horse. We don't have any fingers descending down the limb anymore. They have ascended upward and are now on either side of the cannon bone. And when you learn your anatomy and physiology, if you're not already familiar with it, you'll learn about these appendages as well. And our tendon gets stronger and tighter, again, to support more weight just on one appendage. Notice the skull with the teeth. The teeth are much longer now and have a completely different setup than the Eohippus. We're looking at grazers now all across North America, and we have high crown teeth, and they are going to give rise to our modern horse. And the muscles are starting to change as well. They may start supporting faster and longer reaching limb action. So as the horse gains strides, the musculature above it must change, and so you get a little bit longer back, you get a stronger hindquarter, the neck and the head become a lever to help the horse push and pull in longer strides as they gallop across the prairies and the plains. So where did the horse species originate? Shockingly, it may be to you, in North America, right here in the United States and Canada. That is where horse evolution began. So over time, the horses started spreading and moving to South America, further north across Alaska. They went across what is called the Bering Sea, and they moved into that area and went back and forth as people were, back and forth across this area. So from that land bridge from Alaska over into Eurasia, across what is now the Bering Sea, was all landmass. And horses migrated from North America across into the Eurasian steppes through European and African continent, through Mongolia, China, Siberia, Russia, and down south, closer to what we know as Turkey and the Middle East today. Horses migrated, and interestingly, if you'll read the chart here on the picture, it talks about how horses that were in the wet northern climates developed and how the horses in the warmer desert climates developed. So that's part of our background of understanding of some of the breeds and where they came from and why. So again, it's all about adaptation to the climate, the source of food, driving them away or to an area, water sources, the footing, the type of climate, and what they needed to do to survive. What happened between Eohippus and Equus Caballus of today? This is an article I'd like you to read about DNA analysis reveals North America horses that died out 11,000 years ago were related to the horses of 16th century European settlers. So this again is a very interesting development fact of, again, those horses going back and forth over the land bridge at the time, and then that land bridge disappearing as the Bering Sea grew larger and larger and the water overtook that area to where now the land bridge is gone. So horses became extinct in North America, and they were brought over to the United States and the Caribbean and Canada later on in the 15th century by Spanish and British and Dutch conquistadors and travelers. So this is an interesting article I want you to read about how all that happened and what happened to create the horses that we know today. Now we have undomesticated or wild horses. There are those out there that exist today, very much so. The Bureau of Land Management here in the United States has several herds of wild horses out in the west part of the country, and they are managed and watched and corralled once a year to make sure that they're healthy and safe. We're trying to manage the numbers so that we don't endanger them running out of food and water. And European countries also have feral or wild horses. So these horses are not to be confused with the endangered Przewalski horse or the domesticated horses of today, because some of those horses that we know today were turned out or unwanted and let go with the wild horses. So there's been a mixture now of what are known as wild horses. So we're just going to call them undomesticated. We're going to focus more on the domesticated horse in this course, but you need to know about the Przewalski horse and horses of the past to understand our domesticated horse. So here's a picture of the Eurasian wild horses. They're usually located in Western Asia, the Russian Empire, the deserts, Central Asia. They were almost extinct, and the Przewalski horse was saved in the 60s, and now there are over 500 that still live in the wild in the Mongolian steppes, and there are some in zoos as well. So you need to be familiar definitely with the Przewalski horse and understanding that the tarpon horse is now extinct, but there could be some references in some species that go back to the tarpon horse. So again, learn your 5 categories, 5 stages of evolution, and that will become more apparent to you. Is the giraffe a close relative of the horse or not? They're both categorized as browsers, and we know that horses do occasionally reach up into trees, just like the giraffe to browse, and they do have in evolutionary stages such as Eohippus or Meryhippus, they definitely have low crown teeth. So is the giraffe a relative of the horse or not? The horse is not a relative of the giraffe. It is a relative of the rhinoceros and the tapir. That might be a surprise to you, but when you kind of start looking at the conformation and the formation, and you understand their digestive system, and that they are ungulates, which means odd-toed mover, 4 legs, they do relate. And if you put them side to side, you will see some similarities. So horses are predominantly grazers today, not browsers. So you can see again that sometimes horses will browse today, but mainly they're grazers. The high crown teeth and their ability to move, roam, and graze is all part of the horse's constitution and life force today. There's another group of equus out there called Equus asinus, or you might think of it as asinus, because we do know that donkeys and mules are referred to as asses sometimes. So it might be funny, but at the same time, they do have that name. Horses are a part of the donkey and the mule world because you have to have a donkey and a horse to create a mule. Mules are typically large, anywhere from 14 hands all the way up to 18 hands. There's some gorgeous mammoth mules out there. And donkeys are typically smaller, 13 to 14 hands. They're also called burros. This is another division of Equidae. They are part of Equidae, but they are an Equus asinus or equine asinus. You need to be familiar with those. And some of their distinctive qualities are the long face, long ears, wide eyes, a little bit tougher coat, more of a bristly coat, and a very brush type mane and tail. There's another one too under Equidae called the Equus zebra or zebra. There's the Equus grevyi, the Equus quagga, and the Equus zebra. Now we know more about a couple of these than a third one. So the Equus grevyi is very, very rare. The quagga also very rare, but more predominant than the grevyi, and the Equus zebra is the one we're most familiar with. They all have different stripe patterns, which is just amazing to blend in with nature because they are prey, and there are lions and tigers and hyena and other predators out there, alligators, so forth, that really are looking for prey like a zebra in the wild. Now that we've touched on the evolution of the horse, is this a subject you might be interested in? There are careers around this area: paleontologists, archaeologists, geologists, history majors, people that are interested in the science of fossils and developing new technology to perhaps determine more DNA information that can be used. There's just so much there. So interesting topic here, horse evolution. I gave you the name of a book in the first slide you can use, chapter 3 of that book, but you can also go to animaldiversity.org, and they have a tremendous amount of information on Equus Caballus there. They would have probably the most current information, and as I said, this is a moving target. There is no exact determination that everyone agrees on exactly when everything started and ended. So as they find more and more evidence, they will keep updating the horse species information. So don't think that this is the end all and the finished information about this subject. Keep researching, keep looking, and year by year it's going to be updated and changed. So make sure that you review this PowerPoint and that you have the information I've imparted in this PowerPoint for your first quiz in week 3, and we'll discuss it more in another discussion board. Thank you.